Okay, my English experience, part 5. The last of this 5-part series videos, which I kind of reminisce, meaning talk about my memories as also someone who became an English speaker and how I became an English speaker. So basically, I think where I left off in my last video, I pretty much talked about, middle school, my experience with one of my teachers. I think that the transition to high school was significant for the simple fact that I was feeling under pressure because excuse me, I was seeing that it was really harder for me to make the jump to what my expectations were as an English teacher, as an English speaker, as opposed to what my abilities, in reality were. I was able to speak English just like I am right now, in front of this camera. Was I able to express myself in writing, which was, again, one of the most important elements for the Board of Education in New York? No. So that was really frustrating. And also, stuff started getting more complicated. The material started getting more complex. And now we were studying more towards the matriculate exams, which is the Baogosט. But the interesting part about high school in New York as opposed to the high school in Israel is that it's completely different. It kind of works on the same style of college and universities, because what you do is you accumulate tovrim, you accumulate credits. So that means that in 10th grade, I came to school at 11 and I left at 6 p.m. It sounds terrible in one way, but in the other way, I was a teenager. I got to sleep late. It was really cool. And anyways, no one really does anything in the afternoon, so it was really cool because, I played baseball, so that's what I did. And then in 11th grade, it kind of changed because I was there again from 11, but now till 4. But then in 12th grade, which was great because all of the massive amount of credits that I had to take was in those years before. Now I was coming in at 7 a.m. and leaving in at 10, which opened up, vast of opportunities to get in trouble. But it was really great, because one of the things I think that stood out throughout high school was also, the whole social aspect. New York is known for being a melting pot. Like I mentioned before, there were people from all over the world. Some integrated really well. Others, remain, to their, selected group where they felt that they belonged. There were always, the Russian groups, the Indian groups, the Korean groups, and they stuck together, which was really good. But again, it was like a multicultural thing over there. It's not that you learned a lot, but again, if you interacted with a person from Pakistan or from, South Korea or whatever, you got to learn a little bit about their home and where they were from. But it was really interesting to see again how these cultures, all came together to school, and what was it like for them. I remember that high school was also tough because, again, eventually in 11th grade, I managed to get out of ESL, which was English as a Second Language program. I was super excited. I was like, wow, I finally get to be in regular classes. There were regular classes, but again, it was all a matter of image and stereotype. And again, my head wasn't completely into school. I wasn't the brightest student because, again, it was just other things that caught my attention. And this is where I think I learned my biggest lesson, is that when I reached 12th grade, I realized I was like, oh my God, I'm an English speaker. I wouldn't say that I was able to express myself eloquently, but I thought that I could convey, my thoughts properly. But I was miles from where I figured I should have been, or what, my friends who were native, speakers themselves were there, and how they were conducting themselves in the English language. So it was, for me, it was always like, I was always playing catch up, you know, just always trying to reach that level, and I never felt that I could, because again, it was always that language barrier that really bothered me. And when I realized that I wasn't doing enough to learn, because I only learned English the natural way. Never really learned English the proper way. I didn't go through the proper channels of learning how to write, learning how to speak, even learning how to read, learning how to analyze, summarize. And in high school, it's sort of just like, it fell through, because again, I had enough charisma and enough, ability to be able to memorize things. I was always noted that my writing, I had, writing mistakes, and it wasn't phrased properly. But it never really bothered me enough in order for me to really do something about it. And so when I graduated high school, and by the way, I barely graduated, not because, again, I had, trouble. Like I said, I was a mediocre intermediate student. I got by. But the only thing why I say I almost didn't graduate was because, again, of math. I was a terrible math student. And I remember that, like, I had to wait until the last exam in order to officially get the last credit, which was due for math, in order to attend graduation. Which, by the way, graduation was pretty cool, because I was the class of 2000. And they told us that Hillary Clinton was going to be the guest speaker. And it was pretty cool, because we all, this was the time that her husband, Clint, was the president. So it was pretty cool. And we all made some funny stuff, while going up on stage and receiving our diploma, our matriculate diploma, to the Bagud. But that's when I realized that I was kind of in a haze, because all my friends who were Americans, like I said, I completely integrated into the American society. And I had no idea. I had no idea what steps were necessary for me to take in order, again, to proceed. I was just all in the mood of feeling the vibe and the ambiance of being in high school in New York. Never knew that there was anything beyond that. Yeah, we talked about college, universities, or whatever, but again, like I mentioned before, I was living with a single mom who was trying to make ends meet to survive, and for us to have, proper meal on the table. There was no one guiding me there. From time to time, there were hints, and then I reached the age of 18, and I'm kind of stuck. Everyone's already enrolling and being accepted into the universities, and I'm like not even a third of the way there. So I was playing catch up again. And when I applied to these universities, obviously I had background of being an ESL student, and that what hurt me the most, because again, I had to prove myself to these universities that I was able to be a proper student, where I was able to take regular classes, because what mattered in high school, where I passed that ESL exam, didn't matter in college anymore. It was like a stain on my record. So they were like, no, I'm sorry, but you gotta run through these tests again in order for us to see that you can properly conduct yourself in English, especially, and again, the emphasis was always on the writing. And I was like, wow, that is like my weakest link, that's what was my disadvantage. And I got accepted to this local college, which was a community college, which is, again, just to get my mom kind of off my back and please her. But I wanted to go to college because all my friends were going to college, and I wasn't coming back to Israel to go to the army to enlist. So it was odd. And when I got to college, it was like it was a different time, because nobody was there because they wanted to feel the ambiance and play their role like we did in high school. People were actually there to get something done and get out. Yeah, there were different vibes. Yeah, you had social events and stuff. But again, you had people there also who were 2-3 years older than you, and some even 5 and 6. So once again, I was put to the test, and I failed miserably. And I remember that for the first 2 years of my life in college, all I was doing was just fighting through in order to really become, that English student, or that English speaker that I initially thought that I was, but I wasn't. And I was fighting to prove to the system, and I was fighting to prove to myself that I am able, or I am on the same level of any other English speaker who was native and that was born there. But I wasn't. Because I didn't go through the proper channels. Because the foundation wasn't formed, properly. Wasn't laid and paved for me the way it was for a person who was grown up with a, native speaking family, such as my kids, by the way, which, again, my kids are bilingual, but they're growing up with a dad who speaks to them, in English. And then when they get to the stages that I was at, it will be completely different. Everything will be completely natural for them. But when I realized that, and I realized how tough it was for me to play catch up, I realized I gotta start doing stuff. Otherwise, I'm gonna be left behind. And one of the things that I've always hated, and I'm going on a rant almost for 11 minutes now, is that I didn't want to be left behind. I didn't want to feel that I wasn't good enough, because that was the English experience. That was that part where it was just me always fighting to prove myself, to get that approval stamp. And it was tough. But after almost 3 years, I fought hard. And I did everything in my power by reading books. And I woke up every single day at 6 a.m. when I wasn't supposed to. I sat down and I read a book for an hour and a half. I highlighted everything. I wrote on my palm here 5 words almost every single day. And if I remembered them, perfect. Next day, 5 more words. And that's how it would go. People see always words on my hands, like marking. They'll ask me always, what are you doing? I'm like, nah, it's just a little practice. But I was obsessed. I was so determined to really achieve my goals. And even when I got it, it wasn't enough. And I still do it. I still go through the proper channels today, because I am always reminded of that English experience that I have, that I am never good enough. That's okay, because I like it, because that what elevates me and pushes me to continue to learn and to continue to know that I got to improve my English no matter what. And even today, when I'm considered a native speaker, never good enough. Food for thought, guys.